Okay, hey everybody, this is Chris Kirkpatrick, the founder of College Planning 180 and Life 180. I want to congratulate you and thank you for taking time out of your day. I know that if you're here, that means you probably have teenagers and you probably have a pretty busy life. So congratulations and thank you for taking time out of your day to watch this webinar. Now, I also know if you're here, you probably have a lot of concerns, or at least some concerns around navigating the college planning process. What I can promise you is that whether those concerns focus around the finances of college or the academic planning process or the college selection process or anything in the college planning process in general, we promise to simplify the college planning process for you today. And I promise you that worst comes to worst, if you get nothing out of this, you're going to have, at least after the next hour, you're going to have a lot more peace of mind when it comes to the college planning process. The reality is that you can't plan for anything that you don't understand, so you're going to have a lot more understanding, which is going to simplify that for you as you go forward. So before we get started, what I want to do is I want to get into a little bit of an introduction to me, and so you guys get to understand a little bit who I am. So I'm a pretty competitive guy. When I was in high school, I was one of the top, actually, I was the top rated javelin thrower in track and field. For all of you who don't know what a javelin is, I know it's not the most popular sport in the world, but I was the top rated javelin thrower in the country and had some scholarship offers, and basically everything kind of fell apart on me when I got injured. I ended up blowing my elbow out, needing Tommy John surgery my senior year of high school, and with that, I ended up losing all the scholarship offers that I had because I hadn't committed to a school yet. Because of the fact that those offers and the injury and everything, the way I handled that whole process was so incorrectly done, and I really didn't have a plan, and I was just kind of winging it, and I had no guidance. I wound up with tons of suffocating debt. It was a decade's worth of headaches dealing with paying off my student loans and so on and so forth. So that's one of the reasons that I really love dealing, and one of the reasons I founded College Planning 180 and love helping people deal with planning for college, is because I don't want people to go through what I went through, and people don't need to go through that. This is something that's one of my big drivers. Now, professionally, my background, I spent the last good portion of my career working for a Fortune 1000 financial company. I was a recruiter. I was a director of recruiting and development. So my job there was to recruit people into the financial industry, teach them how to build their business, help them become successful, and kind of repeat that process over and over and over. I actually built my team into one of the top teams in the country for this organization and had a lot of success. Now, the challenge is that there are a lot of handcuffs when you deal in the corporate world. If you have any experience with that, you know what I'm talking about. I needed to be able to get this good information out there to people. I wanted to be able to do webinars like this, and in the financial world, there's some compliance and stuff you have to deal with. And so I wanted to be able to get this good information and partner with great organizations. So what we did with Life 180, when I founded Life 180 in November of 2014, I wanted to go out there and just be a resource, because what Life 180 is all about, college planning, is simply a result of Life 180, because Life 180 is all about finding good resources and creating good content for people so it can answer the tough questions in their financial life. All we want to do is be able to offer solutions to people's financial problems in life. So that gives you a little bit of a background about me. We'll get into it a little more as we go through here. I'm sure some stuff will come up. I'm just kind of ad-libbing. So let's get into this a little bit and talk about what this webinar is all about. Here's kind of a laundry list and a generic. We're going to go over the agenda next. But for now, this is what I want to cover for you guys. The college planning process is a super complex process that doesn't need to be that complicated. The reality is that people overcomplicate it. If you have just a simple process in place, and if you know what you need to do, and if you actually start planning from the very beginning, and if you start planning from freshman or sophomore year on, you don't need to be running around like a chicken with your head cut off when your student's a senior. I think one of the biggest values that we do, one of the best pieces of feedback that I get from almost everybody I work with, is that this program, when we work with people, we actually kind of operate as the family arbitrator for people, because if your teenager is anything like I was when I was a teenager, I just didn't want to listen to my parents. And I know that looking back, my parents had a lot of great information and they definitely meant the best for me. I just had no interest in listening to them. My dad was my javelin coach when I was in high school. When I broke the state record in Vermont, I broke my father's record. My dad was a great javelin coach. I still didn't want to listen to him. So he had to hire another javelin coach for me. It's the same kind of concept there. Our goal is to teach you guys principles, to teach everybody the principles in picking the right school for the student and for the family, whether that comes down to the social environment for the school, the academic standards of the school and their ability to retain workload or handle workload. The geographical location of the school is really, really important. It can be a big shock if you live in Vermont and then go to school in Arizona, for instance, or vice versa. Whether or not you're looking to do sports, are you looking to compete at a Division I level or Division II, Division III? What's that look like? And finally, financially, how is the fit for you from a financial perspective? And we're going to really touch on that because that's a real big one. The goal of this webinar is to save you money. So in order to accomplish that, we're going to also show you a way to actually develop a plan for going through that whole process. And that plan is something that most people overlook. And the easiest way to be successful in anything in life is to have a plan. How do you know how to get to the end result if you don't have a plan? So we kind of play the GPS for you or the roadmap to give you that plan, to give you step-by-step navigation to how to get where you want to go. I want to show you a guide for the financial aid process. It's really not that complicated. I know it's a little overwhelming and arduous, and it seems like it's much more difficult than it is, but the financial aid process, once you understand it, it's very simple. We're going to teach you how to either receive more in financial aid or how to earn more in tax breaks. So what I mean by that is, typically speaking, you can't do both. I hear a lot of responses from people that they either make too little money, so they think they're going to qualify for all the financial aid in the world, or they make too much money and they think they won't qualify for anything. Now, the cool thing about that is everybody can benefit. People who can receive more financial aid, that's excellent for them. But the people who make too much money and won't qualify for any financial aid, we have the ability to not maybe necessarily earn them more in financial aid, but we can get them more tax breaks because they're going to operate on a different side. They're going to have a tax strategy, and we'll get into that. We're going to talk about what need-based aid is, how it's calculated, and why that's important to you. Need-based financial aid is the most important component to college planning and to how you go about all of the other things with selection and with your planning. Figuring out how different schools are going to handle your need-based aid, and every single situation is unique, is imperative to you. So you're going to want to stick around for that. The bottom line is, at the end of the day, what we're going to do here over the next hour, I promise you, you could take the information that you learned just on this webinar and you could potentially save tens of thousands of dollars on college per student that you have. And just to give you a little more incentive to stick around to the end, we're going to give you two very, very valuable gifts just for sticking around. And I'm not going to tell you what they are now, but I promise they're going to be worth it. And I promise there's going to be real value in you sticking around for them. So let's go through the agenda for just a second. So getting a little more specific, guys, we're going to get into the agenda right here for the next hour. And first thing we're going to touch on is to discuss the rising cost of college. Not only the rising cost, but why that's important to you, why it's important that your student understands the rising costs, and how those rising costs could impact the expense of college as they go through the process, and as far as how it pertains to what their student loans look like. We're going to discuss all the financial aid terms and acronyms, and we're going to do that because it's impossible to really understand and make a plan for college planning until you really understand the financial aid terms and the acronyms that go along with it, because it's really kind of like speaking a second language, and if you don't understand them, you're going to miss something. We're going to teach you how need-based aid is calculated, and not just that, but why it's important to you. It literally is one of the most important things, if not the most important thing to understand. And it's not just how the need-based aid is calculated, but how each school actually handles, how they deal with need-based aid differently from one another. We're going to show you how to never pay retail again for college. Not that you ever have, But why pay retail? I don't know about you, but I like discounts. So why pay retail for something when there's always sales going on? It's like somebody going into Macy's and realizing that they going and paying retail for a shirt when the same exact shirt is on sale on the other side of the store. It doesn't make any sense to pay retail for it. We're going to touch on and go over the 6 greatest myths about financial aid qualification, because I think one of the most confusing components of college planning that I hear from a lot of people is people just don't seem to understand how the financial aid system for paying for college actually works, how they qualify for it, how they have to pay back, and all that stuff, everything in between. So we're gonna go over the greatest myths, and hopefully that'll clear up if you believe any of those myths to be true yourself. We're going to teach you, most importantly, as an overview of everything, the whole goal of this, and it gets into the very specifics at the end, but it teaches you, our goal is to educate you on a process for developing a solid college plan. You can't plan for anything unless you understand it, and so understanding is the first step to actually taking a step in the right direction. Once you understand that, then you can implement a solid plan and we can go from there. And then finally at the end, don't forget, we are going to be giving 2 free gifts away at the end. They're going to have a value of about $300. So just keep in mind, please stay on until the end. I promise the value will be there. Here we go. Let's get into the rising cost of college. College tuition has increased so crazy. It's actually, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this slide. You can pause it if you really want to look at the numbers. But the reality is that college has actually doubled the rate of inflation, or more than doubled, for the last 40 years. That far and away outpaces the rate of inflation of almost any other sector in the economy. So something has to give here. From that perspective, college is making less and less sense for a lot of people to attend. And that's just from a pure financial math perspective. But the reality is that people still want to go. So if you're going to go to college either way, why not navigate the process in a way that's going to save you money on a guaranteed basis? You can see here that just taking it to the next level, at this point in time, I know when I was in school, it was only 15 years ago, I got out of paying for college for about $13,000 a year at a good private school. Now the cost of private school is over $42,000 per year. You can see the state schools are almost $20,000 for in-state, and they're over $30,000 for state schools that are out of state. If you're anything like me, there's no way I could fathom when I was going to school that college tuition will be over $30,000 a year for a state school and $40,000+ a year for a private school. So something has to give, or you have to do something differently than anybody else. One of the greatest causes of people having tons and tons of student loan debt, and thousands, if not $100,000+ of student loan debt, is time. I think one of the major things that's overlooked is the fact that most kids, if you look at the numbers, are not graduating in 4 years. In fact, only 66% of kids are graduating from private schools within 6 years, and only 57% are graduating from public schools in 6 years. If you think about that, why is it now, when in a 4-year program, in a 4-year plan, why is it that kids are taking 50% or longer to graduate? I say the reason is because they don't have a plan. Once again, I don't want to keep beating that horse dead, but I'm going to, because planning is the first key to success. So just this takes what I was saying before to another level. You can see here this graph. College tuition is a blue line there. Home prices, you can see, are way lower. Educational books and supplies in the CPI. College costs have surged more than 1,000%. They've gone up 1,000% since 1978. There's not another sector in the economy that has done that. I want you to look at these slides. I'm gonna just shut up for a second, and I'm gonna let you go through these. I know if you're anything like me, time flies. I have a 3.5-year-old daughter right now. It feels like just yesterday she was born. And when I talk to parents all the time, they're in a situation where they're students, they're in high school, and the parents are just kind of beside themselves because they can't believe that all that time flew by. They always planned on putting money away for college, but then when push came to shove, they didn't have the time or the resources or or it just slipped by and they never put money away for college. And so I'm going to just run through these slides, and I want you to sit there and just think about it. Think about it for a moment, and I'm just going to be quiet for a second. The reality here is that so many families, like I said, are just unprepared. And because of that being unprepared, a lot of the times, one of my favorite quotes is, just because the ostrich buries his head in the sand doesn't mean the lion's dinner plans have changed. And I guess what I mean by that is saying, just because you waited what you feel is too long, please, ignoring it does not make the problem go away. And there are some simple things that you can do to regain control of the whole process. And just because you waited too long doesn't mean there's not something you can do. And there are actually some real simple things you can do, and we're going to touch on them right now. Okay, now we're going to get into the financial aid terms and acronyms. And this part gets a little technical. There's a lot to remember, so please get your notepads out if you have any questions, or write them down. But please take notes for this, because it is going to be a lot of learning going on here. Some of it you may know, but we're going to start with the FAFSA. I like to go through this and simplify it by going through what it is. So the FAFSA is by definition, it's a free application for federal student aid. Basically, every school uses it to calculate what the student's going to qualify for as far as financial aid eligibility. And this is going to be the starting point to how they start to deal with the need-based aid that we're going to get into in a little while. They use it to figure out also what your expected family contribution is, and what the expected family contribution is. We'll get into that in more detail as well, but just to give a basic, is the expected family contribution is a minimum that you're going to have to pay for each school, and the EFC is going to be the same at every school that you go to. They utilize this, and they figure all of these formulas out, and they figure out your numbers utilizing what they call the federal methodology, as opposed to the institutional methodology, which some private schools use. We'll get into that as well. We're going to continually have to give information stacking on top of each other here, because it all goes in process. The Department of Education is who administers the FAFSA, but everybody uses it. Every single school uses the FAFSA. That's one thing to think about. Now, some schools use the FAFSA and another form that we'll get into in a little bit, but every school, you actually have to fill the FAFSA out. So every family needs to file the FAFSA. Why? Because if you don't file the FAFSA, if you qualify for any financial aid, you won't receive any of it. The other component to this is that even if you don't qualify for financial aid, you need to have the FAFSA filled out if you want to receive any merit money or anything of the like at any of these schools. How? It's really, really simple to go online and just apply. Now, everybody thinks that the FAFSA is a super complicated form, and because of that, they avoid it. The reality is it used to be complicated when I did it, and a lot of the parents who are, if you're watching this video, you probably are either just a little older than me or about my age, and the reality is that it was probably really complicated when your parents had to deal with it for you. It's not that way anymore. Don't be overwhelmed, and don't let that. Just go to fafsa.ed.gov and it's there. When do you need to fill out? I think this is one of the most misunderstood things. You need to fill it out for the first time in January of the student's senior year. Please fill it out as soon as you can in January. Do not wait. Even though a lot of the schools will let you file the FAFSA as late as June 30th, and every school kind of has their own little deadline set up, the longer you wait, the less likely you are to receive aid. And that's one of the biggest mistakes. So many people feel like they have to actually fill out and have their tax return completed before they can qualify. The reality is that you don't. Just go on, guess, put an estimate, and go from there. Now we're going to get into the CSS profile form. The CS profile form is actually used to award institutional money, and basically that's the non-federal money that some of the private colleges use. using that institutional money, it digs deeper. They have access to a different level of information, whereas the FAFSA doesn't touch on certain assets or whatnot of yours, and we'll get into this more later. The CSS profile form actually can ask you different assets, and different schools do different things. It's administered by the College Board, which is, the same organization that handles the SAT testing. I said it before, but only very few colleges actually utilize this. So about 10% of all the colleges in the country actually utilize the CSS profile form. But if you plan on your child to go to a really high-end school, an Ivy League school, a Duke, a really high-level school, you're probably going to have to fill out the CSS profile form, and they're going to ask for more deep financial information from you than the FAFSA would. Remember, it's always required in addition to the FAFSA. It's never instead of it. Now, you don't always have to file the CSS profile form, but if you do, it's on top of the FAFSA, not instead of it. And remember that with the FAFSA, your EFC is the same at every school that you go to. Your EFC can actually change if you're applying to one of these 400 schools roughly that take this, because they will get into different information of yours, and they can add and subtract questions that they ask you and get into different financial details. So it's key to remember that. And it's key to know that ahead of time too, because if you know what school you want to apply to, working with somebody who understands the process can tell you what schools are going to consider which assets. So that's all good to know. How? Go to student.collegeboard.org, and you could just follow this link right here. Just write it down. If it's something that you think you're going to go to a school and you know they're going to require that of you, it's good to look at. And it's also a good website to go check out, and they have a lot of educational stuff on there. And it's key to understand that you have to pay per school that you apply to. Whereas the FAFSA is a one-time fee, the cost for this, $25 for the first school, $16 every school thereafter. So if you're applying to 10 schools, you're looking at just $160 plus, like $170 something in fees just to apply for the CSS profile. The other component here is that the deadline for each school, whereas the FAFSA is January 1st, that you can start submitting and you should submit immediately. The CSS profile form is really determined. Each school kind of has their own date. So once again, know where to go, know what the cost is, and also know when you have to have that form submitted by in order to be most likely considered for more aid, because once again, aid is given out on first come, first served basis in a lot of situations, so you don't want to wait. So expected family contribution, you've heard me talk a lot about that. If you're planning for college or have thought about it at all, you've probably heard this term, the EFC. Basically, this is just the amount of money you're going to pay. It's the minimum that you're expected to pay, I should say. It's not necessarily what your total out-of-pocket costs are going to be. That's going to be determined on the school that you go to and how they handle your need-based aid. But it takes into consideration your income and assets and then the student's income and assets. My biggest suggestion, though, as far as EFC goes, is figure out what your EFC is early. As soon as we can figure out what your EFC is for you as early as freshman year of your student's high school year. If you know that, it gives you a couple years, and if you have any ideas of what colleges they may or may not be interested in, we can kind of navigate that process and help you start to figure out what your EFC is going to be and how to navigate the need-based process from there. Going through kind of the breakdown for everything here, EFC is broken down. I said for parents' income, parents' assets, student income, student assets. Some of the key things to think about here is that there are some protections for parents. If you have a lot of students in school at the same time, your EFC remains the same. It doesn't change. So if you have 4 students and your EFC is $20,000 and you have 4 students in, your EFC will remain the same. The rest of it, you can increase your need-based aid. The older you are, the more it helps. Students have an income protection allowance, of $6,300 and no asset protection allowance. So it's key, depending on where you are, and depending on what your income levels and if you qualify for more aid or if you're somebody who's going to not qualify for any aid, that's going to dictate where you want your assets and how you want the income to show when you apply for college. Now, I was talking about before figuring out your EFC early. The reason I said that is because your base year, which is how they consider what your first year of financial aid is going to look like, and that is January of your junior year to December, through December of your student's senior year. So you can see if you by January of your student's junior year haven't already had your financial plan in line, it might be too late. If you're kind of watching this and you're thinking, oh no, that's kind of me, get on it as soon as possible. It may not be too late, but give us a call or shoot us an email. Our email address will be on at the end of the webinar, and you can ask any question you want, and we'll try to answer any questions that you ask in a very timely manner. So just real quick, here's a list of all the assets that you could potentially have on the FAFSA that will count against you, that are going to count as far as what you're going to have to pay for college. And you can see here, I'm not going to go down through each one, but just make a mental note of all these different things. If you have, I think what sticks out a lot to a lot of people is a vacation home. If you have a vacation home, that's going to hurt you. And all these other assets. Small business equity, if it's not a family business, is also another one that a lot of people don't necessarily think about. So make sure you do that. Now, assets that are not going to count against you, assets that don't hurt you and don't impact your financial need negatively, are retirement accounts. They're protected. Annuities, permanent life insurance don't hurt you. Home equity, if it's your primary residence, doesn't hurt you. The other thing here is if you're a small business owner and you have less than 101 employees, there are some seriously excellent things that you can do to benefit your family and to actually not necessarily pay less for college, but receive a lot of tax breaks. That it's 6 1 half dozen the other, right? If you get $40,000 in tax breaks and that'll help you pay for school, it's kind of like getting financial aid. So that's some of the strategy that we're talking about here. But you do have to be a small business owner to be able to take advantage of that. We will get into that a little bit later. So the other thing here is the student aid report. The student aid report, that is basically, it's a simple report. Once you fill out your FAFSA, they're going to send you an SAR, a student aid report, and that's going to give you your EFC, your expected family contribution. Cost of attendance, that's how much, that's going to be the sticker price. That's going to be the advertised rate that they're going to send you. Don't get sticker shock. Don't look at that and be like, oh my God, there's no way I can pay for this. Trust me, we're going to get into this, and we're going to show you how when you receive the cost of attendance for any school that you're applying to, don't freak out about it. There's going to be a solution. Okay, now that we've covered all of the major terms and acronyms that you're going to have to know when you go through the college planning process, now we're going to hop into two areas. We're going to kind of combine them together because they really play off each other. We're going to show you not just how need-based aid is calculated, but why it's important to you and how you can utilize that information to never have to pay retail price for college for your students. So let's get into that really to start here. The first thing you need to do to be able to understand and be able to take advantage of certain things is to understand an overview of the college financial aid process. So how it works is, first and foremost, you're going to have to fill out the FAFSA form like we've talked about. You're going to do that in January of the student's senior year. You're going to go from there. Once you file the FAFSA report, it's going to kick out a student aid report. That student aid report is going to tell you what your expected family contribution is. Once you figure that out, then the Federal Student Aid Office is going to kick that information out to all the schools that you're interested in. Once those schools have your information, they'll use that information to figure out what your need-based aid is for that student. They'll determine what the need is for that student. Once they have that figured out, only then can they award a package that actually is in line with what the student or the parents are going to qualify for, and they'll be able to hand out the student merit money, any gift aid, any student work loan program, work study programs, and they'll be able to go from there. That is the basic overview in its most simple form. And if you know that, then you can start to do things more efficiently going through. So let's get into how you can do that a little more efficiently. This is a basic breakdown of what it looks like, what your need is. Remember, need simply is a cost of attendance minus your expected family contribution. That equals your financial need. And your financial need is the maximum amount of need-based aid that a family is eligible for. Doesn't mean you're going to receive aid for all of that. It just means it's the maximum amount. If you don't receive the aid, that's where loans come into play, if you need to take a plus loan or something of that nature. Here's what we do, guys. We put everybody into a category. And typically in life, I don't like to categorize people, but in this situation, it seems to make sense. We put people into one of three categories when it comes to college planning. Either category one, which means they're most likely going to receive funding to get most of their college costs covered. Category two, which is they're most likely going to have at least some of them covered. And then category three, which is they're probably not going to receive any financial aid. Now, category one and two families have to have a strategy that's very similar to each other, and they have to focus on having a strategy that will increase the amount of aid that they receive. In category three, they have to have a strategy where they focus on more tax advantage plan because they're not going to receive any aid. They have some things that they can do. Now, also with category three people, it's not in this on this slide, but another thing that they can think of that all three categories can actually participate in is merit money. If you go through the process and if you've had your student engaged from freshman or sophomore year of high school through senior year, their odds and likelihood of being able to receive merit money are much, much greater. Now, based on the different category that you might be in, whether it's 1, 2, or 3, you can actually implement different strategies, different funding strategies that can either A, lower your expected family contribution, or B, actually put you in a position where you can receive more tax advantages. So if you're in a situation that you're looking for a more aid advantage plan, what you want to do is you want to be able to put the assets and the income into the parent's name. And if you're looking for a situation, or if you're in a situation where you need to take advantage of a tax and you're looking for more tax advantages, that's where parents who qualify for this might be able to shift money, assets, income into the student's name to actually put themselves in a position where they can receive more tax advantages. Once you have that figured out, once you know what category you're in, the most important thing to understand, and this might be the single most important thing, in my opinion, that families need to understand, is that every school has an award history. And the question is what percentage of the family's need, once you understand what your need is, what percentage of your family's need is the school going to meet? Meaning, are they going to cover 100% of your need? Are they going to cover 50%? And out of that need, what type of aid are they going to give you? Are they going to give your student a work study program? Are they going to give you gift aid, right? The different types of aid that are available. I'm going to break it down for you a little bit right here. You can receive either merit aid. Merit aid would be like academic scholarships or athletic scholarships, something like that. It's based on the student's application. Basically, when you apply, they're going to know the type of student you are, how you fit that school, if you're going to compete on sports on some level, if you're going to qualify for some scholarship that an alum offers or something of that nature. They have all that information. They'll use that. And also, there's also need-based scholarships which are based on your FAFSA, based on your financial need, and those are all federally given. Gift aid, scholarships are available. The self-help aid, those are the work loans. So understanding the difference between gift aid and self-help aid is key. We're going to get into that in a minute as well. But just because a school is willing to meet 100% of your needs doesn't mean it's all going to be just given to you in the form of gift aid. A lot of times they'll give it to you, at least a portion of it, in self-help aid, which means the student's going to have to work for it, or they'll give the parents loans or the students loans or something of that nature. But the key thing to understand there is gift aid does not have to be paid back, and self-help aid either needs to be worked off or paid back. So that's key to understand. Sticker price and net price. We've talked about this a little bit, but sticker price is basically the cost of attendance. It's after all the expenses, fees, books, administrative costs, room and board, tuition, everything. Net price is actually what you're going to pay. So I've said before, I've kind of been saying this a lot as we've gone through the webinar here, sticker price, your cost of attendance does not matter. What matters to you is your net price. What's the school going to cost you after you figured out your expected family contribution? Once you figured out your unmet need and the school's figured out what your cost of attendance is going to be, they get that number and then they can give you self-help aid. And that really equals, it says eventual cost here, but what eventual cost is, it's really what your out-of-pocket costs for college are going to be. And that is the net price that you're going to pay. And the reality is that there's no real cookie cutter answer to this. Every single school out of the 4,000 schools there are probably over 3,000 different ways that this is calculated, if not more. And so what we try to do is simplify that process for everybody and give people an understanding. We have all the algorithms that every school uses to be able to give you that information. So the key thing here, guys, is to know what your out-of-pocket costs are going to be. The challenge is that I see so often, and just to reiterate what I've just said, is that so many times parents make big-time uninformed decisions. They go out and they think they either don't qualify for aid, so they don't think about taking advantage of a tax advantage plan. They just pay it because they think they have to. Or even people that might qualify for aid, just they're overwhelmed by it. They don't deal with it. They don't look into different options. They don't try to find the school that best fits their student. They don't try to find the school that actually wants their student to come there. And that's the trick. Every school has a different type of student, a different person that they're looking to go to their school. So it's key to find the right school that's the right fit for you. Another thing to understand is that not every situation is the same. I've said that 100 times probably already. But the reality is there's this preconceived notion that private school is much more expensive than public school. And if you look at the statistics from a sticker price perspective, that is absolutely 100% true. But the reality is that private schools, while they may end up being more expensive in a lot of situations, you can actually go to private school cheaper than public school in certain situations. They have much more flexibility in the types of aid that they're going to give out, especially when it comes to institutional aid. They have other programs that they offer. And the reality is, if you're the type of student that a private school wants, they can make it work for you and the price will be good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through an example of 4 schools. And we're going to take some assumptions into this example and say that a family has an expected family contribution of $20,000 and they're going to look at 4 schools. Those 4 schools, we're going to call them college A, B, C, and D. And you can see the cost of attendance right here ranges anywhere from $25,000, just over $25,000, to almost $65,000. So once again, these are just the sticker prices. Let's go through and talk about how this is kind of broken down. Let's take a look at a little bit deeper into these schools, and let's look at all 4 schools, as I've said. So starting with it, we have tuition and fees. It's going to give a breakdown for every school what the fees are. Let's take a look at the room and board, the books and the supplies, and all the other expenses. When you have all of these expenses added up, that's what equals the cost of attendance to that school. Once you have that, you kind of know that's the sticker price. Now, I've said that this doesn't matter, and we're about to find out why. Every family, we said, is going to have a $20,000 EFC as determined by the FAFSA. Now, this isn't taking into account any of the schools that might use a CSS profile form, but the bottom line is we're trying to keep things equal just for the sake of example here. So all things being equal, we're using the FAFSA for $20,000. So what that does is cost of attendance minus the EFC equals what you have for need or aid eligibility. And you can see here that across the board, the actual cost of attendance has been reduced. Your need or aid eligibility has been reduced by your EFC. So now all of a sudden college D is at $44,000, college B is at just over $5,000, and that's where we stand. Now let's take it to the next level. You have the need or aid eligibility. That's what we're going to start with. This is what you could potentially qualify for. Every school has a different need that they meet. Now this is where it gets really, really tricky. And this is the information that's really hard to find out. College D actually will meet 100% of your need, and you can see college B will only meet 64% of your need, and then college C and A are in the 80-81% range. What that does is they take your need or your aid eligibility, multiply it by the percent, and that gives you your aid estimate. So you can see college D, I'm going to go through that one. College D, 100%, they're going to give you $44,830 in need. As I said before, though, it doesn't all just get given to you. The aid's not given to you. So the question is what percentage is given in gift aid that you will never have to pay back? The answer is different for every school. Once again, in college D's situation, it's 88%, meaning out of the $44,000 in aid that they're going to give you, over $39,000 of it is going to be given to you in gift aid, meaning if you qualify, if you're the type of student that College D is looking for, they will gift you $39,000 per year just to attend that school. What's that mean? That means that there's an extra 12% left, and that is given to you in self-help aid, meaning either loans or work study or something of that nature, stuff that you're going to have to pay back. And the bottom line is, at the end of the day, that equals and leaves you to what you have for unmet need left. And unmet need is where you're going to have to go out and maybe get a Parent Plus loan or pay cash or something like that, take it out of your savings. But the bottom line is, College D, you have no unmet need left. Every other school, you have some unmet need left. Let's take a look at the next level and see what that looks like, because I think you're going to be shocked by the information that we have here. First and foremost, we're going to break it down. EFC, $20,000. That's what you have. That's the minimum based on the FAFSA that you have to pay. Then you have the unmet need. College D, you have 0. College B, you have 2,000. Then you have the immediate costs, right? So you can see the immediate costs are exactly your EFC plus your unmet need. That's what those equal. Then you have your self-help aid. That's what you're going to have to pay back. That's all the money that the school gave you that you either have to work off or pay back. So that's how that's going to work. That will equal your net price for the school. So now all of a sudden you can see that school D, even though the sticker price started off at $64,000, their net price ends up being $25,000. School B, even though their sticker price started at $25,000, their net price ended up at almost $23,000. That information right there, you're probably wondering what schools these are. Well, here you go. You have Texas A&M, Ohio State, Pepperdine University, and Duke University. Now, if I told you could send your student to Duke for a couple $1,000s more, almost $1,500 more than Ohio State University from an academic perspective, assuming that your student wanted to try to achieve those levels of that level of academic achievement, you would do it. You would absolutely 100%, if your student could get into Duke and you could pay that price, you would do it. The challenge that I see is that so many people write off schools like Duke or Notre Dame or other schools that fall into that category that they would want to send their student to, but they don't because they look at the sticker price and they freak out. And the reality is that you don't need to. What we do is we help break this whole process down and show people this is information you can find. All of this, figuring out what each school will give in unmet need, we help people figure that out. So all that being said, now we're in a situation where I want to reiterate and retouch on families that don't feel like they're going to qualify for any aid. Now, like I said, there are a lot of people who feel like they're not going to qualify for any aid that will. But for those people who truly are not going to qualify for any financial aid, I implore them to figure out and think about and consider a tax advantage college plan. What that does is, just to reiterate on a couple slides ago, is it shifts the income and assets from the parent to the student. And you can do that simply by taking advantage of education tax incentives, really doing some creative things on the income tax planning, on the tax strategies, using different gifting rules, kiddie tax rules, and really leveraging the student's tax capacity to be able to receive the most tax benefits possible so you can qualify for more. And then when you qualify for more tax advantages, what it'll do is you can use that savings and put that towards college. Now, the great thing there is that even though you don't qualify for the aid, so to speak, it's kind of 6 1 half dozen the other. If, rather than qualifying for $25,000 in financial aid or gift aid, if we could figure out how to get you $25,000 in tax incentives, it's kind of a wash. It's 6 1 half dozen the other. So I implore you, even if you make more money than you think you will be able to qualify for financial aid for, think about the tax strategies. Question is, who benefits? And just to reiterate for you guys, the only people who can do this are people who fall into the category 3. They're not going to qualify for any financial aid, and they have to own a small business to be able to do this. If you're an entrepreneur, if you own a business, if it's a family business or something of that nature, then you have the flexibility to really, really leverage these tax strategies. If you're somebody who works for a big bank or a big company, if you're work for an engineering firm or something of that nature, and you just got $250,000 a year of W-2 income from a company, unfortunately, this is not going to work for you. As I said before, income is better off in the students' names. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but it really is true, and there's a lot of things you can do. And what it's going to do is it's going to increase the amount of money, right? If we save you money on taxes, it's going to be more money on your pocket that you're going to be able to shift over and pay for college. Now I want to get into some of the 6 greatest myths when it comes to financial aid qualification. These are really important because I think a lot of people lose thousands of dollars, probably millions of people lose thousands and thousands of dollars each year simply because of not understanding or having false beliefs in certain college planning myths that are pretty rampant amongst people who are planning for college. So let's get into that just a little bit. I'm going to touch on a lot of these because I've already talked about them, but I want to just reiterate when they're important. A lot of people think they make too much money for college. I've said that a bunch of times already. We know now that that is not true. Even if you don't qualify for an aid-based plan, there are typically things for most people that they can do to qualify for a tax advantage plan. A lot of people think filling out the FAFSA is difficult. You probably think that because, like me, when I filled out the FAFSA, or my parents had to fill out the FAFSA, I remember them just sweating and struggling through it because of the fact that it was hard. But guess what? With technology now, everything is a lot easier. There's helps and hints. It takes about 30 minutes to complete. They have this thing called skip logic, which basically allows you to skip unnecessary questions. It auto-populates certain things. And so filling out the FAFSA now is really not challenging at all. Next one is people think their students' grades are too low. And people that think their students' grades are too low and they won't qualify for FAFSA or won't qualify for any financial aid, your students' grades have nothing to do with actually the aid that you're going to qualify. It may have to do with some of the merit and need-based stuff that you're going to qualify for, but once again, that goes into school selection and finding the right school that's going to look for your student. And there's always a fit. There are over 4,000 schools in the country, so find the right fit. Take the time to go through the process to cut your expense for college down. There are also a lot of parents out there who feel like they don't want to pay for their students, and the reality is they try to, or they assume because they're not going to foot the bill or participate in helping pay for their students' college, that their student will be able to report as an independent student, meaning they're out of the home. And the reality is that that's not even possible unless the student's 24 years old, or they're married, or they have kids, or they're a veteran of the armed forces, or they're in the military. Or if they're homeless or emancipated, or they're working on an advanced degree, basically they have to be Doogie Howser at that point in time. I know I'm dating myself with that statement. Unless they fall into that category, whether you like it or not as a parent, unfortunately, you're stuck participating in helping your student navigate the college process, especially the financial component of it. That's an unavoidable, necessary process that you're going to have to navigate. Now, and next one is debt. A lot of people think that, if they have a lot of debt, it's actually pretty shocking to me how often I see people think that their debt load is going to help them. So they go on and take more debt thinking that if you have more debt, they're going to qualify for more financial aid. And the reality is that debt doesn't have anything to do. It's not even considered on the FAFSA. It has nothing to do with what you will qualify for financial aid. A lot of people think their home is worth too much. Your home equity on the FAFSA does not count as an asset. Now, I do want to throw in a caveat there saying that for the CSS profile, sometimes home equity, some schools do count home equity as an asset. If you're applying to a school that requires a CSS profile, you're going to want to just double check and make sure. And that's, once again, that's where it's key to start planning ahead of time. Because if you know you want to go to a school that counts your home equity on the CSS profile, if you know their sophomore or junior year that they're interested in doing that, well, then you need to position yourself financially, and you can shift assets around that will actually help you reduce your expected family contribution for that specific school, which is a big deal. This is the second biggest. If I said understanding how need-based aid works is the most important, to me this is probably the second most important component. And it's one of the most misunderstood myths about aid qualification is people think they have to file their tax return before they actually fill out their FAFSA. I've said that a little bit already. but do not wait. You can file your FAFSA as early as January, the first business day in January. So file it early, file it with estimated numbers, because most people's income are pretty consistent. If you're the type of person who has a job or an income that really is a roller coaster ride from year to year and you don't know what's going on, just put in your best estimate. My guess is that you have an idea where you stood based on the previous year by the time January 1st rolls around. So throw in your best estimate. But I do have to say, make sure that you don't estimate too high or too low, because if you estimate too high, they're going to, as far as an income, you're not going to qualify. If you estimate for too low of an income, they're going to give you more aid, but you have to go in after you do your taxes and you have to update it. And if you go too low and they give you a bunch of aid, they will change it and they will make adjustments as far as the aid that you receive. So make sure to be as accurate as possible, knowing that you're probably not going to be right on point. All right, I hope that clarifies some of the greatest myths. And what I want to do now is I want to kind of come down the home stretch and teach you what we consider to be the proper process for developing a solid college plan. And it's amazing some of the areas in which I think kind of people fall down here. Understanding this will really simplify everything. We basically break it down in two parts. First step is education. So congratulations, that's kind of what you're doing now. You're starting, if not, maybe this isn't even the beginning of your education journey. Maybe you've subscribed to some other stuff. But the reality is that you are obviously the type of person who is looking to educate yourself. So don't make any assumptions or guesses. You have to know what's what with the college planning process. Next one is evaluate. Figure out your EFC. Figure it out early. We can give you an estimate of what your EFC is as early as your student's freshman year of high school. That'll give you an idea of where you're going to be and how you can maybe navigate the financial process. If you do that, then you can figure out what category you're going to be in. You can figure out all of the processes that we've talked about so far. Once you understand that, then you can pick some schools that maybe are good fits. You can go visit those schools. You can evaluate them. And you can learn all of the money-saving strategies and alternatives that we kind of teach people. And then you can figure out only then if you need to go borrow money, if you need to figure out how you're going to navigate the financial aid component of things, and you need to borrow money or pay cash or whatever, then you can do that at the end of that process. And then finally, after education and evaluation, there's execution, right? Because no plan is good without proper execution. Once you have that, you need to develop a plan, you need to prep, you need to select the right school, and then you have to pay for the right school so you don't destroy your retirement income. Far too often, I see families that are going out there and that are just taking a hit on their retirement to pay for their students' education. And the reality is that you can take a loan for your students' education. You cannot take a loan for retirement. And so that's a big thing to consider. Now, there are several factors when it comes to college planning. First and foremost, I guess we start with the head, right? What's logical? What career do you want? What majors are you interested in? So on and so forth. Those are all things to consider. Then there's the heart. We in high school, we're probably more emotional in high school in our teenage years than we are at almost any other time in our life. So, what feels right? Do you have a boyfriend or girlfriend that you're trying to follow? It's amazing how often I see that. Did mom and dad go to a specific school? Do you root for teams? Do you just want to be in a specific area? And then there's the hand. How much is the school going to cost and how are you going to pay for it? That's where college selection really comes in. Unfortunately, what I see here is that most families kind of do it the wrong way. So they navigate this process, and what they do is they try to figure out first and foremost what school do they want to go to. Then they try to figure out, okay, if I want to go to this school, what majors does that school offer? And then once they figure out their major, they go, okay, what career fits that major? Unfortunately, guys, even though that seems like what everybody does, because that's what most people do, the reality is that's just not a logical process to actually go through a college planning process and get out. Right now, the unemployment rate for newly graduated college students is as high as it's been in a long time. And so if you want to be able to pick a school, if you want to be able to have a good job when you get out of that school, first thing you need to do is figure out what career you want to do. Then once you figure out the career that you're interested in, only then should you go choose a major, right? So if I know that I want to be an electrical engineer, well, okay, that's easy. I know I need to go to school for electrical engineering. But if I know that I want to be a financial advisor, or if I know I want to be something else, I need to go figure out what I want to be. Then I need to figure out what major best fits. Where am I going to have the most likelihood of receiving a job after I get out of school? So figure out what major has the best hiring rates for the career that I'm interested in. So once I do that, I figure out the major, then I go and figure out which schools have the best programs for the major that I'm interested in. Can you see the difference in the two different types of planning process? The challenge is that this process right here, the choosing a career, then choosing a major, then choosing a school, in order to do this, you have to be actively engaged, and you have to have the student actively engaged from freshman or sophomore year in order to be able to do it. We really implore you to actually start taking the steps to walk down that process. So when it comes to school selection, the best practice is, just to reiterate, you want to investigate the career first, then the major, and then the school. Figure it out. Figure out what kind of job do you want. Do you want a corporate job? Do you want to work for a big Fortune 1000 or 500 corporation? Do you want to work do you want to be an entrepreneur? Do you want to create your own business? Do you want to start a family business? Do you want to do something like that? Which businesses, which are you interested in, and which majors would fit your career? And then what school? Visit every school that you're interested in. Once you figure out and you select different schools that are the best fit for you, it's key, it's imperative that you go visit the schools. We're going to touch on that in 1 second. I'm going to let you know, I'm going to let the cat out of the bag right now. One of the things that we're doing, one of the free gifts that we're giving you, is the college visit score sheet. And what that's going to do is it allows you to go to every school and compare every school apples to apples. We all know psychology. If you visit 10 schools, you're going to remember the first and the last, and everything else becomes mud. What this does is it allows you to go in and teaches you and kind of guides you as to what questions to ask, things to consider, things to visit, things to evaluate, and you go in and you compare apples to apples. The next step in the school planning process is evaluation. Now, when you're evaluating, when you're visiting the schools, the visit is a big component of evaluation of the school. If you're going to spend $100,000+ on education, it makes sense to spend $1,000 to visit the school, in my opinion. The first step is figure out, from an evaluation perspective, what's the school like? What are the demographics of the school? Does it have the workload for the school? You know, if you go to Duke University compared to Ohio State, sure, we might be able to show you how you can get into both schools for the same price or roughly the same price, but the bottom line is, does your student want that workload? Some do, some don't. See all the dorms, visit the dorm rooms. Don't just visit one dorm, because a lot of times they'll take you on the tour, they'll bring you to the nicest dorm, the newest dorm, all that stuff. Make sure you visit multiple dorms, go see them, try to take a look. You're going to be living there for potentially 4 to 6 years, hopefully not 6, but you're going to be living there. So make sure you visit them, because sometimes it can be pretty ugly. Also, make sure you visit the cafeteria. Make sure you try the food. Make sure you test the food. Everybody's got different dietary restrictions and likes and desires and all that stuff. And most schools these days have really good programs, and they're taking health and wellness into real good considerations. While that's all good, you still want to go test and make sure the cafeteria is up to your liking and that it fits. Not that it's a make or break decision, but it potentially could be. You also want to make sure that you go in when you're evaluating, when you're visiting the school, is sit on a class. Ask the students and teachers questions. All of this is on the score sheet. All of this is there, and it'll teach you some of the things that you need to ask, and figure out what the grading scale is for the school. Are there tutoring options? If you have a struggle in an area like math or English or sciences or whatever, what do they have for tutoring departments that can help you push through your own barriers? If you're a student athlete, ask the questions, what the workout schedules are like, what the practice schedules are like, how student athletes have to deal with makeup classes or work or something like that. The reality is every school, once again, is different. Then job placement's obviously a big deal, although those numbers sometimes are not as accurate or not as relevant depending on the major. But make sure you figure out what the job placement is for your specific major, not just the school from an overall perspective. From a cost-effective perspective, I know that so many families are having a hard time figuring out how they're even going to pay for college. And the reality is that one of the easiest things that you can do to save money on college is to take and knock out some of the core classes simply by navigating it with a community college. Here's an example of a college A and B, which is college A is a typical university and college B might be a community college, and it's the same, the credits will transfer. College B, for the same math class, you got $408 for that class versus $3,700. So you're looking at over $3,300 in savings just from one class. If you could do that for 5 classes, you're saving over almost $17,000. So if you could save almost $17,000 on 5 classes, my suggestion to you is do it. Take time during the summer to take those classes at the community college, or you can even intertwine them into your workload. Maybe take 12 credits at the other school, or 15, and do an 18 credit semester, unless you're an athlete, which that'll be too much to deal with. But the next part, everybody, in the evaluation process is to make sure that you involve your student and involve them early. Start early. Get them going on the career exploration. Get them thinking. Get them engaged, thinking what they might want to do for a career. Now, I know not every student is going to have it all figured out. In fact, most won't. But to reiterate, having them think about it is going to increase their success of graduating in 4 years much more greatly. If they were to wait and not know what career they wanted to be in, that can impact what they want to do for their freshman or sophomore year in college as far as their degree selection. Picking the wrong degree early just because they don't know might be the top reason that people don't graduate in 4 years. So do not make that mistake. Have them look for scholarships. There are always scholarships for everybody in different areas. ACT, SAT prep. Test scores matter. People, I think, overlook this a lot, and they don't put enough time or energy into thinking about this. But your ACT or SAT scores do matter. Schools look at it, and if you're looking for merit money at a top-notch school or even a mid-level school, it's one of those things. A lot of people that are applying, a lot of students that are applying to schools, their GPAs are going to be very similar. What will set you apart is your test scores. Your resume, your high school resume, matters a lot. Schools are looking for students who are actively involved in their communities. Think about it. The student is going to go to the school, and then the student, after they graduate, is going to be a producing member of society. A lot of the schools function based on alumni donations, and somebody who's going to be actively engaged as a high school student is much more likely to be successful in life after college, therefore being able to donate more money as an alum. Involve them in the admission process, and then I'm a big believer students need to understand financial literacy. So please get them thinking. If you involve them early, they can be educated as to the ramifications of picking the wrong school, spending too much money on school, understanding why it's important to take that community college class instead of doing the math class at their big university and paying an extra $3,000. Having them understand that, don't get into the suffocating credit card debt when MasterCard is on campus and trying to dole out credit cards. That's a big thing. So also the next step, evaluating and understanding the student loans that are available. Now, everybody is going to qualify for student loans on some level pretty much. Most people will. And so Stafford loans are available. They change. The amount that you qualify for changes based on the year. But the key here is I just want to touch on is understand the difference between subsidized and unsubsidized. If you have a subsidized student Stafford loan, a subsidized loan means the government's going to pay the interest for you while you're in school. An unsubsidized loan means you don't have to start paying that loan back right away, but the bottom line is that interest starts accruing on that loan as soon as it's dispersed. And when that happens, if you take a $5,000 Stafford loan your freshman year, by the time you graduate at 4.66%, you're not going to owe $5,000. You're going to owe probably $7,500 or $8,000, depending on how long it takes you to graduate. But the reality is that most of these loans, they're all paid back over a 10-year pay period. Understand that just because you take a loan for a certain amount doesn't mean that's what you're going to need to pay back. It's most likely, at least on some level, going to be higher than what you actually took out for a loan. If you have a need still, after all is said and done, A lot of parents rely on the PLUS loan. The PLUS loans are available in additional loan to the Stafford program, but the key here is that parents need to qualify for it. Too often I see parents kind of fall back on the PLUS loan and automatically assume that they're going to get one, but the reality is you have to qualify for a PLUS loan the same way that you would qualify for a mortgage. Not just that, PLUS loans are not cheap. You're looking at over 7% interest right now, and the challenge with these is also once the money's been fully dispersed, you have to start paying back that money within 60 days as the parent. So from a cash flow perspective, maybe you need to do it, maybe you don't, maybe you qualify for them, maybe you won't. But the bottom line is this is all, once again, stuff that you need to be thinking about before you get to that point. You don't want to be making any shotgun decisions on this stuff. Here's some things that you absolutely want to avoid. I'm not even going to talk about this a lot, but please do not use your credit cards to pay for college, and do not liquidate your 401k. It is not worth it. There are better ideas. If you're thinking about that, please call and talk to a college planner. If you have any questions about that, you can email us. Our email will be on the end of the webinar. Please, please ask questions. If you're thinking about doing either of these, I implore you, do not do it. What's next? We're starting to wind this down here. We're getting towards the end. What's next? And the reality is that the answer is different for everybody, right? Because everybody's in a different situation. Everybody has different amounts of kids, different financial constraints. They're in different financial positions. You're in different professional and personal goals, right? I'm seeing more and more often that parents are going back to school, and I'm seeing parents in school at the same time as their student who's just entering college. And lastly, once again, you do not want to have college have a negative impact, any more of a negative impact on your retirement than it absolutely has to. The reality is there's no cookie cutter situation. There's no cookie cutter answer to what's best. It is kind of an art form, but navigating the process is not as hard or overwhelming as it may seem from the outside, as if you have a process or a system to walk you through it. And I'm going to touch on this one more time. I know I've kind of said it before, but paying for your kids' education should not cost you your retirement. You cannot borrow for retirement. You can borrow for college. College funding success, planning for your kids' college and making sure you pay for it properly should not come at the expense of retirement failure. That is just one thing that is, to me, a non-negotiable, and I see too many parents making that major sacrifice, and it doesn't need to be that way. All right, so who are you going to talk to? Who's qualified to help? And the reality is that so many people I see rely on their CPA, and I understand why. CPAs do taxes, and they fill out forms, and they deal with all the technical financial nitty-gritty stuff. And so they automatically think that because they do that they're going to be good with the FAFSA. And the reality is that your tax returns are nothing like the FAFSA, even though you have to use some of your financial information. If you work with a CPA, make sure that CPA has an intimate knowledge with the college planning process. The next person who's qualified to help, but I would say watch out, is guidance counselors. Guidance counselors are beautiful, wonderful people. The challenge is that they're overworked and they're overburdened. I talked to a guidance counselor the other day. An amazing person, does a lot to help her students, but she's got a 200-to-1 almost ratio of students that she deals with. So, and not all of them are dealing with the college planning process. So there's a lot of great information in your guidance counselor's office. There's a lot of great tools that they can give you. And so definitely take advantage of it. But in most people's situations, relying solely on that is not going to be in your best interest. And not only that, guidance counselors are looking for help from college planners. So the college financial aid officer, a lot of people will call up the school that they're applying to and ask the college financial aid officer for their opinion or help or whatever. But remember that college financial aid officer does not have an unbiased opinion. Remember that their objective is to get you into that school. A lot of people fall to their financial advisor. They say, 529 accounts are big when it comes to college planning. The reality is that just because a financial advisor can offer you a college planning account in the form of a 529, that does not mean that they understand the ins and outs of college planning. You need to work with somebody who understands college planning on an intimate level. And lastly, but probably most importantly, your next door neighbor and your water cooler buddy. I would say, please, 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 Once again, everybody's situation is different. Please do not take advice from these guys unless you're the exact same age, have the exact same assets, the exact same income, have the exact amount of kids, in the exact amount of everything. Then maybe, and they want to go to the exact amount, the exact same school, the exact same degree, and all that stuff, then you could take their advice. But if you find something like that, you might as well find a unicorn, because that just doesn't happen. Okay, so that's about it here. I know that that wasn't the most exciting thing in the world to watch, but I promise you that that information has set you ahead of 99% of the people out there in the world who are planning for college currently, and it could potentially save you tens of thousands of dollars, maybe even per year, on your student's education. I know the reality is that you can make a lot of this stuff work on your own, right? You can go out and figure out what school, which schools offer 100% of the financial need of the students and how they break it down. And the reality is all that information is available, but it's buried. It's hard to find, and it's going to take you hours and hours and hours per school to figure out all the information that we have, the tools and algorithms that we can get for you, all in the matter of minutes. So once again, I'm going to go through, we have what we call our complete college planning solution kit. And what it does is it puts you through a program that allows you to prep smart. And so what that does is it gives a student the ability to prepare and start preparing in high school and start becoming engaged in the process. The assessments, right? Making sure that they start taking career matchmaker, ability profile, and learning style assessments. Those are all big things to get them engaged and thinking about not just where they want to go to school, but what they want to do, and then work backwards from there, right? Back into a school selection. Help them build a profile, right? A portfolio. Which sports are they going to compete in? Which community activities are they going to be involved in? Are they going to do band? Are they going to be in theater? Are they going to do stuff like that? Are they going to be involved in community service? All that stuff matters. We give students a month by month, and the parents as well, a month by month detailed plan of things that they should be thinking about from freshman year to senior year of their high school season to go from there. So those things allow the student to prepare in the most effective, efficient way is possible. So once you have the preparation out of the way, then it gets into the selection. And that's where it's really key to compare the schools. You figured out what degree, what career you want to go into. Then you can start using our interactive college searching tools to actually find the schools that best fit that career, that offer the best programs for the career that you're interested in. You can do that and search from all over the country in geographical areas based on cost, based on everything. And then with a selection process, one of the things that we are told from the people that we work with that's the most valuable to them is that we can give them the chance of acceptance and the cost foresight for up to 10 schools. So how awesome would it be if you could know exactly what the school is going to cost, or really to a close degree of error, what the school is going to cost you before you even apply, and what the chance of acceptance is going to be to get into that school. So if you knew that, it could save you hundreds, if not $1,000+ on actual applications, because rather than applying to, I met somebody the other day who applied to 24 schools. Rather than applying to 24 schools because they didn't know what would look like what, they just kind of threw mud at the wall and hoped it stick. We narrowed it down, and we were able to show them a way that they could actually apply to 6 or 7 schools and know beyond the shadow of a doubt what their chance of acceptance was at each school, and what, if they did get accepted, what their financial aid package would look like after all was said and done based on their specific situation. That's huge value. Then, once again, pay smart. That's the next step. So prep smart, select smart. Then once you get there, pay smart. Utilize our scholarship search tools. You can search and save these scholarship searches from freshman, sophomore, junior year on. You'll be notified when you actually need to apply for the scholarships that you like. There are thousands of scholarships out there. There's over $18 billion in financial aid and scholarships available every year. Get your hands on some, use a scholarship search tool, and go from there and really engage with that, and make sure you take advantage of the stuff that's out there. All you have to do is write an essay for a lot of these things, and you can qualify for a scholarship. Use the aid eligibility comparison report. You can compare 2 schools side by side. The financial aid guide kind of walks you through a lot of the stuff that we talked about in this webinar, and it's there to hold your hand for it. And all of that combined, if you go through the prepping and selecting smart, ultimately what happens is you just happen to pay smart. And what that does is it saves you thousands and thousands of dollars on tuition over a 4 or 5 or hopefully not 6-year period. Or potentially, if you have multiple kids, it's even more valuable. On top of this, what we're going to do is we're going to throw in additional perks. We're always going to be available on the phone. Monday through Friday, we're always going to be available. 3 hours of planning comes in, whether it's in person, on the phone, or in a webinar. What we do is we will get you off the ground. I like to meet, and people on our team like to meet with the student and the parent. So the parent first and then the student alone, just to get a gauge, because once again, to go back, we play arbitrator, right? We help the parents kind of convey what's important to them, and taking a lot of times finances come into play. But at the same time, I know the parents typically want what's best for the student, and they want them to be able to go to a school if they can make it work. Playing that balance is really, it's an art form, and we're really good at it. And at the end of the day, what we want to do is to be able to give the parents peace of mind in the planning process, because if you've navigated everything here, you're going to have peace of mind. That's not it, though. If you take all this into consideration, you're going to save hundreds of hours off your life. You're going to save from errors that are going to cost you thousands of dollars. And if you take that stuff into consideration, the program's pretty much a no-brainer. And here's what it costs. Most people choose to do the premium solution, which is the $2,497 program. So almost $2,500. And what that does is it gets you the academic preparation plus either a financial aid college strategy or a tax advantage college strategy, depending on what you choose for. Now, the one on the right, the ultimate solution, that's only for very few select people. If you think you might qualify for the ultimate, give us a call before you actually do it, because it's just one of those situations that you have to fall into you have to own a business. Your income has to fall in a very small range for you to be able to qualify for tax advantages and financial aid potential advantages. And of course, then there's just the academic solution. If you choose to just do that, that'll just be the prepping and the academic side of things, and it won't include any of the tax strategy or the financial aid college strategy, which obviously I totally recommend. Now, this was probably one of the best reviews I've ever had from a client, from somebody that I work with. And basically what he said here is, I'm not going to read it word for word, you can read it, but what he's saying is that he worked with another college planning organization and spent thousands more than we charge, plus he had an ongoing fee in working with that organization. The awesome part, what I love, is that we actually offered not only a lower price, but we had better service, we had more resources, more tools, a better online platform, everything to go along with it. And so he loved it. And now, what we're doing here is, for people who are coming through on the webinar, is that we're offering a special bonus. We're offering special bonuses to everybody. And these bonuses, are going to equal as much value as the course in itself almost. So the first thing is, we touched on how important ACT and SATs are and having your grades up. So we're offering a free prep course for the SATs and ACTs. That's a 20-week course. It's a $1,500 value. We're also throwing in 3 hours additional of counseling. So that's a $375 value. So that's going to give you 6 hours of counseling of scheduled time. You're obviously always allowed to call in. We're always going to have somebody who's available. So that's part of our process. But as far as like scheduling time, that's an extra 3 hours that usually books out at $125 an hour. I believe financial literacy for students is so important. We actually have a financial literacy program, which is a $199 value. We're throwing that financial literacy program in. It's more of a game than anything, and it's something you can play with your students, and it's something that I actually find students play with each other, and it's something I totally recommend, and it breaks it down. It makes it fun to think about, and it takes these hard conversations about how the student should view money and handle their money, and it teaches them in a fun way. We're going to give you also the book, College and Retirement. You can do both. This is kind of an outline of a lot of the stuff you've read here, but you'll be able to go back and refer to it. We're going to give you an executive college planning organizing binder. It's a nice leather binder. In this is going to be the printouts of all of the stuff that we offer. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to give you guys the College Keystones monthly newsletter. Now, the College Keystones monthly newsletter, that's a $99 value. You're going to get a newsletter every month about the college planning process. What's going on? What's new in the world? Have regulations changed? Have financial aid rules and regulations changed? So on and so forth. That's something that, you'll probably spend 20 to 30 minutes a month reading, but it'll definitely keep you up to speed on what's going on. And then this is what I'm doing, whether or not you buy our college planning program or not, whether or not you become a client of ours, we're going to throw in the free college visit scoring system. Now, this is a $150 value. All you have to do is email me. I'm going to give you the email on the next page. So all you have to do is email to get it. But what this does is it's a college visit scoring system that, like I said before, you're going to be able to compare apples to apples for each school, and you're going to be able to go from there. You're going to be able to figure out which school is the best fit for you, really by comparing every school equally to one another and not just playing the guessing game. The one thing that I didn't include on this list, which I'm throwing in just as a webinar bonus, is if you watch this and if you stayed through to this point, whether or not you want to get started and go and purchase the program right now and become a client and have us really help hold your hand and walk you through the college planning process and be there as your advocate over the next 4 to 8 years for the college planning process. We are here, and I want to be able to offer you value. I know you need to get started. I don't want it to be overwhelming. So what I want to do is I want to offer everybody who watches this webinar a free EFC calculation. So I don't care if your student's a freshman, sophomore, junior, or senior, shoot us an email. We can set up a time. We can get on the phone. You can even call us at 1-844-LIFE-180. Get a hold of us, and we will help you figure out what your expected family contribution is now before it's too late. When it's all said and done, I want to thank you guys for watching this, but I also want to say what I find is there really couldn't be any greater investment that you could make over the next couple of years. For $2,500, when all is said and done here, everybody, my perspective on this and what I hear from clients all the time is that there's really no greater investment that they could make. If you're going to be spending $2,500 on a program and you're virtually guaranteed to save at least more money than you pay for the program, and what we find is the average person saves more than $14,000 on this program per year, I challenge you to go out and find another place you can put $2,500 over the next 4 years and get a $56,000 rate of return. That's, to me, the numbers speak for themselves. People's happiness, their peace of mind, their extra sleep they get at night, and the improved relationship with their student, it all speaks for itself. All we want to do is be a resource for you. Please reach out and give us a call if you have any questions. We're here. If it's a question about some of your technical stuff, or if it's a question about the program in general, we're here to answer them. You can email college@life180.com. You can give us a call at 1-844-LIFE180. We'll be there to answer the questions. But until next time, live abundantly, live efficiently, live Life 180. We look forward to hearing from you soon. Take care.